A woman wakes up alone inside a spaceship, but suddenly she spots an unknown blue sphere in front of her. This thing is actually devouring humans. In the future world, human technology is highly advanced, and humanity has successfully colonized the whole solar system. But with the rapid expansion of the population, the structure of human society has undergone earth-shattering changes, gradually dividing into three forces. The United Regime controls Earth, the resource-rich home planet. The Martian Republic, as an independent regime, rules Mars. The last one is Ceres, which is close to the asteroid belt. Ceres is not only the most important gateway to the asteroid belt, but also a gathering place for lower-class laborers. Every year, it can extract a large amount of rare resources for human society. But because it's a gathering place for laborers, they have no armed forces and even no political power. They can only, as the underclass, suffer long-term exploitation and enslavement from Earth and Mars. Their essential resources like air and water are as scarce as gold. Moreover, in recent times, the situation between Mars and Earth has deteriorated, causing the supplies available to Ceres to start becoming scarce. As resources become increasingly scarce, the people on Ceres have begun to feel dissatisfied, and order is already teetering on the brink of collapse. Perhaps a revolution for rights will break out here soon. In this tense situation, Detective Miller, who lived on Ceres, suddenly received a mysterious mission commissioned by Earth. Considering the current situation on Ceres, Miller initially didn't want to take it on, but his superior said that as the sheriff of Ceres, there were some things only he could do. After all, the police sent by Earth were completely unfamiliar with the local situation. Coupled with the current conflicts, it was very likely to lead to irreversible consequences. Hearing this, Miller could only agree to the mission. Then his superior told him that the mission was to find a girl named Julie. According to his superior, she was the daughter of the largest financial conglomerate on Earth. Not long ago, she joined an organization on Ceres called OPA. After that, she completely lost contact. Hearing this, Miller suddenly became interested, because the nature of this organization was very special. It was an organization that opposes Earth's rule. Nowadays, many laborers, including those on Ceres, were born in the low-gravity environment of asteroids. This caused their bone density to decrease during growth. Their whole body structure had changed. Even if they were sent to Earth, they couldn't adapt to the gravity there at all. Therefore, many people on Earth regard Ceres laborers and Martians as inferior. Although they had extracted a large amount of resources for the planets, they still suffered discrimination and suppression. Even if they made the slightest mistake, those rulers would punish these laborers by cutting off their water and air supply. Thus, a group of people decided to resist under this oppression. They established an Outer Planets Alliance, abbreviated as OPA. Their slogan was to oppose Earth and promote the independence of asteroids. Miller's interest in the resistance organization naturally wasn't because he was keen on resisting for independence. In fact, what he cared about was why the daughter of Earth's richest man would join such a resistance organization. This was completely opposing oneself. Miller really couldn't understand this behavior. With the interest in investigation, Miller immediately took action. First, he went to Julie's residence, copied the itinerary log in the room, and tried to find some useful clues, but he found no obvious abnormalities. But it wasn't completely fruitless. Through this information, Miller learned that she owned a private spaceship named Narrowback Whale. Miller thought this might be a clue, so he paid attention to it. Then he continued to look for abnormalities. While Miller was conducting an in-depth investigation, the situation on Ceres became increasingly severe. The Canterbury, an ice mining ship scheduled to deliver water, hadn't arrived for some reason. At this point, the water resources on the whole Ceres were already on the verge of exhaustion. Many other asteroids were in a similar situation to them. These laborers were all anxiously waiting for this life-saving ice mining ship. At the same time, the Canterbury, thousands of miles away, was meeting with a crisis. A few minutes ago, the Canterbury was operating on the outskirts of Saturn's rings. They used a drone to push a huge piece of ice into the cabin. As long as this piece of ice was delivered to the asteroid, everyone on the ship would make a huge profit. Even two workers couldn't help but beam with joy at the huge profits implied by this lucrative, almost cost-free business. But at this point, an accident suddenly happened.
Watch out!
Scattered ice fragments rushed toward the two men. In just an instant, one man's arm was broken. Luckily, his companion rescued him in time, saving his life. The news of the worker's injury attracted the attention of the managers above. Upon learning of this emergency, Second Officer Holden rushed to the scene to check. At this time, the colleague with the broken arm was having his wound treated. There was no trace of sadness on his face. It seemed that losing an arm was just a trivial matter. It turned out that due to the continuous development of technology, high-quality prosthetic limbs had already been mass-produced, which could completely match the original arm. In addition, advanced technology for physical regeneration had also been developed. As long as the crew member was alive, the severed limb would regenerate soon. Therefore, Holden only offered a few brief words of comfort, and then continued his patrol duty. Before long, he arrived at the first officer's room. Holden keenly perceived that the first officer's condition was very abnormal. He seemed to be trapped in some kind of hallucination, constantly stepping on the dirt on the ground, while describing scenes of returning to Earth. Holden immediately realized that long-term drifting in space had caused mental problems for the first officer. He reported the matter to the captain right away, but the captain could do nothing but first have the first officer undergo treatment. But during this period, the ship certainly couldn't stop operating. They had to select a temporary first officer. Finally, under the captain's arrangement, Holden was promoted to take over the first officer's position, to assist him in managing the Canterbury. But on the day Holden was promoted, an accident suddenly happened. The Canterbury, in the vast universe, received a mysterious distress signal. According to the Interstellar Navigation Convention, when a spaceship receives a distress message while navigating, it must immediately launch a rescue operation, otherwise, it will be deemed illegal. But this message was really too suspicious. After pondering for a moment, the captain ordered the navigation log to be deleted, because in this uninhabited area, dangers lurked everywhere. Interstellar pirates often send decoy signals to rob passing merchant ships. The captain believed this message was most likely a trap, set by interstellar pirates, and they also had the important task of delivering water to the asteroids. If they delayed their journey because of this, and failed to deliver water to Ceres in time, the residents there would surely fall into a serious crisis. Everyone, including Holden, didn't refute the captain's opinion, but Holden was deeply disdainful of the captain's approach in his heart. Therefore, he secretly sent away the on-duty crew member in the middle of the night, restored the deleted navigation log, and verified the authenticity of the information. In this message, Holden heard a woman's cry for help. He immediately concluded that this must be a comrade in crisis, and thus became even more unable to stand by idly. He resolutely uploaded the message to the headquarters, but it was precisely Holden's reckless action that caused the crew to face an unprecedented crisis. The next day, after the captain found out, he was furious with Holden, but due to orders from superiors, he could only suppress his anger. He ordered the cargo ship to turn around and accelerate, heading for the message transmission point 50,000 kilometers away, to carry out a rescue operation. The crew quickly got fully equipped, and secured themselves to the driving seats with special equipment. Then they injected a mysterious white liquid into their bodies. This is an anti-pressure drug, because the spaceship's full-speed travel would exert enormous pressure on human internal organs. To avoid rupture of internal organs caused by acceleration, they had to take such protective measures. As the spaceship's engine systems operated at full capacity, the crew raced toward the destination in a hurry. The 50,000 kilometer distance passed in the blink of an eye. After reaching the target location, Holden volunteered to lead a 5-man team to pilot a shuttle to go to the accident ship Hyon to check the situation. As soon as Holden and the others boarded that spaceship, they immediately noticed something was wrong. The whole spaceship was terrifyingly silent, with not a single soul in sight. Following the source of the distress signal, they arrived at the control console, only to find it still empty, with no one around. And that signal was actually generated by a decoy transmitter. Holden and the others immediately realized something was amiss, because such things are usually used by interstellar pirates. Realizing they had been tricked, the group hurried to retreat, planning to report the situation to the captain, but somehow a warship appeared out of nowhere beside them. Holden recognized at a glance that this was the unique black technology of the Martian regime. Before Holden and the others could react, the warship unhesitatingly launched several space torpedoes at them. Watching the oncoming missiles, Holden and the others were in despair, having prepared to meet their deaths, but those torpedoes passed straight through their vessel and raced toward the distant Canterbury. It was clear that the enemy's real target had been their mothership from the very start. By this time, it was already too late to realize. The Canterbury and all its crew were instantly engulfed in a sea of flames. Seeing this scene, Holden couldn't help but feel endless regret welling up in his heart. If it weren't for his arbitrary decision to dismiss the captain's experience, these companions would never have died here. The shockwave from the mothership's explosion, carrying countless debris, rushed toward them at a very fast speed. The Hyon, under the violent impact of the debris, disintegrated and sank almost instantly. Luckily, Ike, the shuttle's pilot, had years of driving experience and quick reflexes, allowing him to maneuver the shuttle to successfully dodge the fatal impact in the nick of time. But this explosion still caused some damage to the shuttle. The shuttle's oxygen supply device malfunctioned. Luckily, the Martian Republic warship not far away, after sinking the Canterbury, didn't attack the shuttle but turned around and left. Watching the enemy's retreating figure, Holden felt not only anger but also a trace of confusion. If possible, Holden wished he could rush over and perish together with them, but the captain and the others' experiences still needed to be made public. Moreover, the shuttle wasn't equipped with any weapons, so the most important task at present was to repair the oxygen supply device, then send a distress signal and wait for rescue. Without supplies from the mothership, if no one came to rescue them within a few weeks, they would have to wait for death here. Luckily, the damage to the oxygen device wasn't serious, and it was repaired before long. This allowed them to survive longer. To increase the chance of being discovered, Engineer Naomi instructed everyone to remove all unnecessary electrical equipment in order to concentrate energy and send more distress signals. After that, all the power of the shuttle was used to supply the signal transmitter, but even so, the transmitted signals were still weak and short-lived. If this continued, their chance of being discovered would be very slim. Naturally, Naomi was unwilling to wait for death. He suddenly remembered the signal transmitter found on the Hyon earlier. Naomi instantly had an idea. He planned to integrate it into the ship's signal system to amplify the distress signal, but when he opened the transmitter, he was immediately shocked by its internal structure, because it was actually equipped with the top military technology of the Martian Republic. This further proved that the attackers were by no means ordinary interstellar pirates, but the military fleet of the Martian Republic. But this made everyone even more confused. They were just an ordinary ice mining ship, not at all worth the dispatch of a warship. Everyone on the shuttle fell into confusion, but there was no time to think more now. They decided to connect the transmitter first. After that, everyone fell into a long wait. At the same time, Miller on Ceres got stuck in his investigation. As a native asteroid dweller born and raised on Ceres, he constantly faced discrimination from Martians and Earthlings. It was very difficult to get any clues about Julie from them, so he spent a lot of effort to get a little information about the narrowback whale spaceship. But when he rushed to the hangar to look for it, he found that the spaceship had long since left. Of course, it wasn't completely fruitless. Miller accidentally learned that Julie had boarded a spaceship named Hyon not long ago, and she had an argument with someone at the dock before departure. Miller immediately called up the Hyon's crew list and began to carefully check through it. Of course, Miller never would have imagined that by this time, the Hyon had already turned to debris in space, and no sign of Julie was found on board. During Miller's investigation, Holden and the others on the shuttle finally received a rescue signal. They didn't think much, quickly sent the coordinates, and received a reply from the other person. Just as everyone was happy about leaving soon, they found that the rescuer arriving was actually the Donnager, the flagship of the Martian fleet. This scene undoubtedly made everyone fall into deep thought once again. After all, they ended up in this situation totally thanks to the Martian warships. Everyone guessed that the other person had come not for rescue at all, but to kill them. But now that the coordinates had been sent, those Martian spaceships would arrive here before long. They seemed to have to let fate take its course. At this point, Holden suddenly had an idea. Ignoring everyone's dissuasion, he used all the remaining energy to send a warning video to the whole solar system. In the video, he laid out his previous rescue experience in full, and pointed out the major suspicion of the Martian Republic. At the end of the video, Holden clearly said that if they met with misfortune, it must be Mars pulling the strings behind the scenes. He thought this would make the Donnager wary, but it played right into the hands of the mastermind behind the scenes. The already tense interstellar relations became even more strained. Of course, Holden had no idea how much trouble this move would bring about. After sending the warning, he and the others quietly waited for the arrival of the Donnager. Before long, the Donnager arrived beside them, under the guidance of a tugboat. The group got into the interior of the warship. As the airlock opened, Martian troops immediately took control of Holden and the others, and isolated and interrogated them. By this time, Holden's message had spread throughout the whole solar system. After the police station on Ceres learned of the situation, the chief immediately gathered everyone to discuss countermeasures. Ceres was nominally administered by Earth. Now the actions of the Martian fleet were nothing less than a declaration of war against Earth. Ceres would most likely be engulfed in war as well. Therefore, the chief ordered them to make full preparations. After the meeting, Miller sought out the chief alone, and informed him of the clues he had uncovered recently. He said that Julie had completely disappeared after boarding the Hyon. During this period, Miller, while checking through the Hyon's crew list, discovered that all the people on the ship were members of the Resistance organization, so he deduced that Julie was most likely being held captive by the Resistance organization. There must be a bigger secret hidden within this, so Miller hoped to continue the investigation, but the chief stopped him, because in the current situation, they had to set aside time to prepare for the possible riots that could break out on Ceres at any time. After a brief hesitation, Miller chose to disobey the order. Not long after, Miller found Dawes, the leader of the Resistance organization, to ask about Julie, but this guy refused to admit to the kidnapping. Dawes said that Julie had boarded the Hyon totally voluntarily. He had absolutely no involvement in any kidnapping or coercion. Miller naturally didn't believe his nonsense, and Dawes didn't care. Instead, he tried to brainwash Miller, inviting him to join the organization, to fight for the rights of the asteroid people. At the same time, news of Holden and the others also reached Earth. Mary, a high-ranking official of the United Nations, had actually been wary of the Martian Republic for a long time. Now that something had indeed gone wrong, she couldn't wait to find the Secretary General. She claimed that all of this was a series of incidents, orchestrated by Mars and the Resistance Organization in collusion. She believed that among the two forces, Mars first caused a water shortage on Ceres, then had the Resistance Organization incite the people, and finally, Mars would send troops to occupy Ceres, under the pretext of quelling the rebellion. As a gateway connecting to the asteroid belt, Ceres's location was crucial, therefore, the Earth government mustn't stand idly by. Mary proposed quickly dispatching a fleet to take over Ceres, but her radical plan was immediately rejected by the Secretary General. The other person believed there must be something fishy going on. Seeing that her superiors hadn't approved her plan, Mary didn't give up. She decided to prove her speculation from other aspects. On the other side, after Holden and the others were taken into custody by the Martian military, they were separated for interrogation. To his surprise, the commander of the Martian fleet said that the warship that attacked them wasn't being controlled by Martians at all, and the reason the Donnager was in the vicinity was to investigate the destruction of the Phoebe base a short time ago. Hearing this, Holden immediately realized something was wrong. Then, under the other person's guidance, Holden learned that Naomi was likely a member of the Resistance Organization. It was his secret meddling that had led to the current situation. The captain demanded that Holden conduct a universal live broadcast, retract his accusations, and use Naomi as a scapegoat to defuse the incident. But Holden always felt there was something odd about it, so he didn't do as the other person demanded. This made the commander very angry. While the two sides were arguing endlessly, they were completely unaware that riots had already begun outside. The people of Ceres erupted completely. People held various slogans, publicly expressing their support for the Resistance Organization. Countless people took to the streets to demonstrate, erupting in a fierce conflict with the police detectives maintaining order. But they had no weapons after all. It didn't take long for them to be suppressed by the police. While cleaning up the scene, Miller found a special deceased person among the crowd. This person was Beach, a former member of the Hyon crew. This discovery made Miller more convinced that the Resistance Organization must have kidnapped Julie. Just as Miller was fully immersed in the investigation, his assistant was surrounded by the Resistance Organization during the riots, and was eventually brutally killed by them. But at this point, Miller still didn't know that members of the Resistance Organization had killed his assistant. He sent Beach's body to the forensic doctor for an autopsy. Then, based on the information he had, he went to the bar where Beach often hung out to investigate. Later, Miller accidentally learned that Beach was secretly a data hacker, specialized in selling stolen important data. At the same time, the forensic doctor discovered a memory card while handling Beach's body. After getting the memory card from the forensic doctor, Miller immediately called his assistant, but no one answered. At this point, Miller realized that his assistant had been brutally killed. On the other side, Holden was still arguing endlessly with the Martian captain. The other person hoped that Holden would release a video to shift all the blame onto Naomi, thus passing the blame to the Resistance Organization. Even the captain hoped that Holden would frame Naomi for the destruction of the Canterbury. While the two were arguing, a mysterious unknown spaceship suddenly launched an attack on the Donnager. The captain responded quickly, organized firepower to counterattack, and the battle instantly became intense. To the commander's surprise, this attacking spaceship was equipped with firepower systems that far exceeded those of a normal fleet. It was even slightly superior to the Donnager. After destroying 4 of the enemy's warships, the Donnager suffered heavy damage and had to shut down its main engines to maintain operation. Clearly, defeat was inevitable. In this melee, one of Holden's companions was shot and killed, but at this point, the Donnager could barely protect itself and had no time to care for them. Eventually, the Donnager's railgun was destroyed, and it was completely reduced to a wreck. The enemy took the opportunity to dispatch landing pods to invade. It was only a matter of time before the Donnager was completely captured. The captain had to let Holden and the others go, and arranged for his trusted first officer to take them away, because only if Holden and the others left safely could Mars' innocence be proven and the Martian Republic cleared of suspicion. Under the first officer's cover, Holden and the others successfully hid in a small spaceship. As the spaceship successfully escaped, the captain's anxious heart finally calmed. At this point, she decided to defend her dignity as captain, and resolutely activated the self-destruct program, to perish together with the mysterious warship. Having escaped with their lives, the group once again began to drift through the universe. They weren't sure if the mysterious warship had been completely destroyed. To avoid being tracked, after escaping the enemy's sight, Naomi took the initiative to shut down the main engine, and escaped in stealth mode. At this point, the first officer, who had been injured while covering them, could no longer hold on and succumb to his severe injuries. Now, without the first officer's accompaniment, they dared not seek help from Mars. If they acted rashly, they would likely meet with hostile spacecraft. But drifting like this in the universe was clearly not a long-term solution. They knew well that they would be caught by their enemies sooner or later. Just as everyone was at a loss, a sudden message broke the silence. The sender of the message was named John. He claimed to have been the director of the Mormon Tycho station. Having been removed from his post by the bishop, he harbored resentment and led workers to occupy the station. He was now a member of the resistance organization. John said that after seeing the message from Holden, he immediately began searching for their whereabouts, planning to recruit them into his faction. To jointly resist the oppression of Earth and Mars, Holden and the others thought they could finally have someone to rely on. But after investigation, Ike learned John's true identity. They immediately began to object, because John had a very bad reputation. Years earlier, John had served in the military, but he had a very brutal personality. Even when the enemy had completely surrendered, he still ordered the complete destruction of their space station, resulting in countless deaths. Accepting an invitation from such a ruthless person indeed required great mental fortitude, but Holden kept persuading everyone because, to some extent, they had no other choice but John. As survivors of the Canterbury and the Donnager, before the truth was clear, they were almost equivalent to the dangerous elements of the resistance organization. Neither Earth nor Mars would accept them. After weighing the pros and cons, the group finally decided to go and join John. At the same time, on Ceres, Miller's investigation was progressing quite smoothly. He found records of a spaceship named Anubis on the memory card obtained from Beach. This spaceship flew from the Phoebe Research Institute to Eros, and the research center on Eros was an absolute restricted area for everyone. Besides that, Miller, following the flight path of the Anubis, discovered the Hyon, the Donnager, and even the Canterbury were all on this route. Therefore, Miller guessed that the Hyon, which Julie was on, was probably sent to intercept the Anubis. Perhaps there was some kind of important item on board, but Miller had no clues about this for the time being. But what was certain was that someone was trying to cover up some secrets, so they targeted all spaceships on the same route. So this item became the focus of Miller's subsequent investigation. To uncover the truth, Miller didn't stop for a moment, and continued to follow the lead of Julie. He found out that the person who had an argument with her in the hangar was named Porter. But at this point, Dawes, the leader of the resistance organization, suddenly appeared and apologized to him. He repeatedly emphasized that this wasn't done by the resistance organization. He came in such a big way to recruit Miller to join him in jointly completing the independence revolution for Ceres. Dawes claimed that he wanted to obtain more useful information by leveraging Miller's identity as a sheriff. To show sincerity, Dawes revealed Julie's identity as a member of the resistance organization. He claimed that they had no reason to kidnap their own member. In fact, Dawes and others also wanted to know what exactly had happened to Julie. After the previous events, Miller never let down his vigilance against the resistance organization. So after a brief thought, Miller didn't accept Dawes' invitation. Instead, he left and hurried to Porter's residence. Later, Miller quickly subdued Porter with his strong force, and then subjected him to a series of interrogations. He successfully obtained information about Julie from Porter. According to Porter's account, Julie had come to his place a few weeks before boarding the Hyon. She asked Porter to help find a data hacker, but didn't reveal what exactly it was for. After getting this information, Miller immediately rushed to the data hacker's residence, only to find that the place had long been empty. Just as Miller was feeling disappointed, he suddenly noticed the mechanical mouse on the table. Miller clearly remembered having seen an identical mechanical mouse when he was investigating Julie's room earlier. In that instant, Miller seemed to think of something. He immediately rushed to Julie's residence. Sure enough, he found a hidden memory card in the mechanical mouse. For safety reasons, Miller hid the card in his hat, but as soon as he walked out the door, he was attacked. When he woke up, he found that the person appearing in front of him was actually Dawes. The other person urgently asked Miller if he had found any important clues. By now, Miller had long realized that things were by no means as trivial as Dawes had described. The other person must have played a very important role in this. He must never hand over the memory card to the other person. Seeing that Miller was still unwilling to cooperate, Dawes gradually lost patience and ordered his men to conduct a forced search. Luckily, Miller had taken precautions, so the memory card wasn't found. Upon learning of this result, Dawes immediately ordered to kill Miller on the spot. Then Miller was severely beaten by two thugs. He was then thrown into a cargo pod. As the air was rapidly pumped out, he gradually felt the fear of suffocation. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, two gunshots rang out. It turned out that his colleagues from the police station had rushed to rescue him in time after learning the news. On the other side, after several days of navigation, Holden and the others finally arrived at Tycho Station. To guard against fraud, Holden only took Ike to talk to John. After learning about their journey's experiences, John wasn't angry about Holden and the others' wariness. John asked Holden and the others to prove that this series of events had nothing to do with Mars. So, that he could take this opportunity to return to Earth. The situation was still unclear. Holden refused the other person's request. The atmosphere between the two sides immediately became tense. Luckily, those left on the ship had long anticipated this outcome, so they had already made preparations. At Holden's order, all weapons were aimed at the space station. John, instead, became a hostage and was taken into the ship. Facing the interrogation by Holden and the others, John revealed that if they wanted to know the truth, they should find someone named Leon. This was information he had obtained from inside the Resistance organization. After hearing this news, Holden immediately decided to set out to find Leon, solve all the current mysteries, and ease the tense situation on Ceres. If a war really broke out because of him, Holden would regret it for the rest of his life. But they must disguise themselves before heading to the destination, because this Martian Republic battlecruiser had now been exposed. Once discovered by the enemy, everyone would face another fierce battle. On the other side, after escaping with his life, Miller hurried back to the police station, handed over the obtained memory card, and only then learned its contents. It contained a piece of video footage obtained by Julie, showing that a new type of bioweapon had been discovered. In the Phoebe Research Institute, Julie wanted to hand it over to Dawes to help the Resistance organization counter Earth. Dawes was in need of such a weapon, so he approved Julie's plan. Later, he arranged for the Hyon to seize the Anubis, which was transporting the weapon, but apparently, the mission failed. Judging from the current situation, it seemed that someone had gained benefits from this. To hide the secret, this person also frenziedly blew up all ships on the route. After listening to Miller's report, the sheriff seemed to attach great importance to it, and immediately properly locked the memory card in a cipher box. The next second, the chief suddenly pulled up Miller's file. Before he could react, the chief immediately deleted it, and formally informed him that he was fired. Miller was very shocked. He finally realized that the chief was also one of Dawes' men. On Ceres now, all essential living resources were controlled by Dawes, and even the police station had become his territory. Dawes had already become the true ruler of this planet. Miller left the police station in disappointment but didn't give up. Instead, he went to the bar again to find Dawes and firmly said that he would never compromise nor join the Resistance organization. After saying that, he left resolutely. Although Miller had lost his police identity, he still had connections. Through a friend who worked at the airport, Miller learned that a shuttle from the Anubis had once come to Ceres. According to the registration information, the Anubis later went to Eros and hadn't left since. If he wanted to continue the investigation, his friend suggested that Miller go to Eros. After getting the information from his companion, Miller resolutely boarded the spaceship bound for Eros. At the same time, because of the video sent by Holden, the whole galaxy was in an uproar. Mary on Earth had never let go of this matter. After her proposal was rejected by the Secretary General, she had been looking for other evidence to prove that Mars planned to attack Earth, but due to the great distance, she could no longer contact Holden. For this reason, Mary found Holden's mother on Earth, hoping to conduct a personality analysis by learning about Holden's past, to ensure that Holden didn't intentionally stir up war. Based on his mother's account, Mary believed that Holden had no intention of rebelling against Earth, and uploaded her conclusion, hoping that the superiors would prepare to go to war against Mars. But the UN Secretary General believed that it wasn't worth starting a war over such a trivial matter, so he chose to issue a warrant for Holden to completely sever his ties with Earth and effectively prevent the outbreak of war. At this time, Holden still knew nothing, and they were heading for the destination marked by John. But because the Donnager was destroyed, the whole route was full of inspections by Martian troops. Luckily, their spaceship was also a Martian warship, so the chance of being suspected could be lower. Just as Holden and the others were about to breathe a sigh of relief, Naomi suddenly noticed that the spaceship had been sending signals outward since an unknown time. By this time, it had already attracted the attention of the Martian patrol. Holden hurried to the cabin to investigate why, only to be shocked to find a stranger inside, and it was he who was sending information outward. Holden quickly acted to subdue him, but this couldn't change the fact that they had been noticed by the Martian patrol. Several Martian spaceships were flying rapidly toward them. The group hurriedly interrogated the man and learned that he was actually a commercial spy who had long been lurking beside John to steal important information from Tycho Station. The reason he chose to escape this time was that he sensed he might be exposed soon. He knew well that if he fell into John's hands, he would face a fate worse than death. So he had hidden in the spaceship early, planning to send a distress signal to escape during the journey, but he never thought it would attract the attention of the Martian patrol. Once the patrol boarded and inspected the ship, everyone on board would be in great danger. In the nick of time, Holden and the others had no time to deal with this spy. Naomi urgently tampered with the ship's internal data, disguising the spaceship's information as a transport vessel. But if the patrol demanded to board for a thorough inspection, their level of disguise would be easily exposed. Just as the patrol demanded to board for inspection, everyone panicked instantly, but the spy said he had a way to get them out of danger. As a commercial spy, he had long maneuvered between various forces, and mastered a lot of inside information, including a hidden rule about Martian warships. Martian spaceships on secret missions often needed to disguise themselves, so the Martian government designed a special access code. As long as the verification was successful, the patrol would never disturb them again, but it's easier said than done. They had no idea what the code was. Amid everyone's anxiety, Holden remembered that the first officer had given him a key before his death. With this key, Holden and the others finally found the code book in the console before the patrol boarded for inspection. After that, they successfully submitted the code, and the patrol immediately withdrew. No other spaceships came to disturb them afterward, and the group arrived at their destination smoothly. But when they arrived at the coordinates provided by John, they failed to scan any trace of a spaceship, only a marked asteroid. They decided to inspect the asteroid carefully, and finally found a cloaked spaceship in the corner of the asteroid. Holden immediately thought that the original Canterbury and Donnager were both destroyed by such cloaked spaceships, and the truth of the matter was probably hidden here. Holden and the others immediately put on spacesuits, and went to the abandoned spaceship to investigate. When they boarded the spaceship, they found no trace of any living person. In addition, they found a spacesuit belonging to a crew member of the Hyon in the cabin. Everyone became more confused. Later, the group decided to split up. Holden and Naomi went to the engine room, while another companion went to the cockpit. From this, they learned that the spaceship was called the Anubis. Yes, it was the very spaceship Miller had been looking for. While everyone was inspecting the spaceship, Holden and his companion in the engine room noticed something unusual. A mysterious unknown substance clung tightly to the nuclear power unit like a living thing. As the spaceship's power was restored, the substance began to emit light, accompanied by strange wriggling. They immediately realized something was wrong, quickly retreated to the entrance, and cut off the power again. As the current was cut off, the mysterious substance dimmed again. Later, through the spaceship's log, Holden and the others learned that the spaceship had departed from the Phoebe Research Institute, with its destination being the distant Eros. Shortly after the spaceship set off, a gas leak happened on Phoebe, turning the whole planet into a dead land. Combined with the strange creature on the spaceship, they naturally didn't believe it was an accident. It was very likely caused by this thing. Thinking of this, Holden and the others couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. To ensure the safety of all humanity, Holden made a prompt decision, and ordered to launch missiles to completely destroy the Anubis. After completely wiping out the Anubis, Holden and his group didn't return to Ceres but headed for Eros, because in their previous investigation, they discovered that the Anubis shuttle had gone missing. Holden and his group guessed that Leon must have escaped the ship by the shuttle, and then sent a message to the Resistance Organization's headquarters. Since the shuttle had a limited range, the closest location to here was Eros, so Leon could only have gone there. In this way, Holden and his group also arrived on Eros. Guided by the artificial intelligence and the commercial spy's right eye, the group locked onto the hotel where Leon was staying. Later, they successfully obtained his room number, under the pretext of celebrating Leon's birthday. Just as they were about to take action, the commercial spy took the opportunity to escape. Then several customers in the hotel suddenly opened fire on Holden and his group, and a fierce battle broke out between the two sides. It turned out that since arriving on Eros, the spy had been contacting his associates to seek a way to escape, which led to this exchange of fire. Just as Holden and his group were struggling to fight back, Miller, who had come to Eros to investigate, suddenly appeared and helped take out those enemies. Then he recognized Holden's identity at a glance, and Miller's heart was filled with mixed emotions. In a sense, this long investigation journey was caused by Holden and his group, and now they unexpectedly met here. Later, Miller learned about Leon from Holden and his group, and decided to go upstairs with them to investigate. The two parties came to the door of the room on the 22nd floor together. They broke in roughly only to find the room pitch black and filled with a strange smell. Following the smell, the group went to the bathroom and saw a woman's body lying there, her body covered with the same strange creatures from the Anubis. Clearly, she had been killed by them. At this point, Miller recognized that the woman was none other than Julie, whom he had been searching for, and also Leon, the informant mentioned by John. As for the specific reasons, it dates back to a few days ago, when Julie received a mission from Dawes to pilot the Hyon transport ship, to intercept a seemingly ordinary small transport ship. On board this ship was the latest biological weapon, developed by her father's corporation, but as they gradually approached the target, they were horrified to discover that the Anubis was actually an advanced warship, and the Hyon was completely powerless against it. So Julie and the others were all taken control of by the Anubis, except for the corporate Eros. All other companions were brutally killed, and Julie was imprisoned in a cabin. Therefore, Julie overheard their plan. They planned to install an inducer on the Hyon, to destroy all passing ships, and when the number was sufficient, the device would automatically send a message that Mars had declared war on Earth. thereby triggering a war between the two sides. At that point, people's attention would be diverted, and no one would pay attention to Eros anymore. After learning of this terrible plan, Julie was very anxious, but the only thing she could do was send a distress signal to the resistance organization through the emergency beacon. Later, Julie fell into a coma due to water shortage. After an unknown amount of time, when she woke up again, she found the whole ship in a deathly silence. With no sign of anyone, she carefully opened the cabin door, confirmed no one was around, and prepared to leave. At this moment, Julie's hand accidentally touched a mysterious glowing liquid, which was flowing out of the cables. Julie guessed that the strange occurrences on the ship were likely related to this liquid, so she mustered up the courage to investigate a little. Finally, she reached the engine room and saw a shocking scene. Julie immediately informed Dawes on Ceres about the terrifying creature. Julie suspected that this thing was the biological weapon developed by the corporation to prevent it from endangering human safety. Julie docked the spaceship behind an asteroid and sent the location coordinates to the resistance organization. Then she piloted the shuttle to Eros to wait for rescue. But when Julie arrived on Eros, she found that she had been infected with that biological weapon. Unknown liquid began to appear on her body, and with exposure to light, the mysterious substance spread rapidly over her whole body. Desperately, she smashed all light-emitting objects, but still couldn't stop the spread of the substance. In the end, Julie died painfully in the room. Now, shortly after Holden and the others left, a group of uninvited guests arrived here. The leader among them was none other than Julie's father. Watching his daughter's tragic death, the old man showed no emotional change. He simply dispatched technicians to extract the biological weapon from Julie's body. Then the old man ordered to spread the virus on Eros to obtain more experimental data. Not long after, Eros announced via broadcast to all residents that there was a hazardous substance leak. All ports on the planet had been blockaded, urging people to enter shelters. Unaware residents immediately panicked and hurried to the so-called shelters, but Holden and the others, who hadn't left yet, perceived that this matter was by no means simple, seemingly exactly the same as what happened on Phoebe, so the group thought they must escape from this planet quickly. As for Miller, after hearing the broadcast, he also detected something abnormal, but he planned to go deep into the shelter to investigate. Holden, seeing he couldn't persuade Miller, could only instruct his companions to head to the spaceship first, while he would go with Miller to find out the truth, before rejoining the others. Later, the two sneaked into the shelter and discovered the whole truth. The so-called shelter was actually a place where people were infected with the biological weapon, then exposed to high-dose radiation to activate the weapon's reproduction, with relevant data being collected. After learning the truth, the two disguised themselves as security personnel and sneaked into the port, taking advantage of the chaos, only to find that the security personnel here were confronting the corporation's men. Miller and Holden immediately realized that the corporation, in order to cover up the news, even planned to silence the security personnel. At this point, the angry security personnel and the corporation's men started a fierce battle. Holden and Miller took the opportunity to sneak into the elevator pod, and finally, with the help of their teammates, boarded the spaceship and escaped Eros with great difficulty. As the spaceship moved away, Eros was completely engulfed by the biochemical virus. The escaped Holden didn't stop. He was determined to expose the corporation's true nature, thus embarking on a new journey. The film ends here. 2015. The first season of The Expanse was released in December 2015. The theme of the film isn't particularly innovative, and the plot is just mediocre, but its depiction of details is excellent. In particular, the show depicts distinct cultures developing under different gravity conditions, which also makes some parts of the plot somewhat slow. In addition, the dual storyline design was relatively innovative at that time. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.